Hello, I am Larry Hillman, Kidman Coach. Now, right now, I want to take just a few minutes and look at some things that would help you to be a good leader. There are a lot more than what I'm going to tell you right here, but I just want to look at a few. The first thing is looking at who is a leader. By that, I mean, are there natural, or do you have to be a natural born leader? Are you just born that way? Well, yes, there are people who are born leaders, but you can also learn to be a leader. And even those who are, quote, born to be leaders have to learn some techniques and things to help them continue to be a better leader. Some people think they're a leader because they get promoted into a position of leadership. But positional leadership, just, like a sergeant or a lieutenant in the armed services, that's the lowest form of leadership, just your position. Well, you have to do what I say because of my position. That doesn't make you a good leader. That makes you a good position holder. A leader is someone that people follow. So you can be a leader and not have some position or title behind your name because people are following you. Now, one of the things that I find that is the hardest for young leaders to do anyway, is to see themselves as a leader. They have to change their thinking. They have to change the way they look at themselves. As Christians, we need to look at ourselves the way that God looks at us. You remember in Judges, the story of Gideon. He's hiding in the winepress away from the Midianites so that they won't find him and take the grain that he's grinding. And an angel appears to him and says, "Hello, mighty man of valor." In other words, hello, mighty warrior, hello, conqueror. And Gideon says, "Excuse me, who are you talking to? Not me. I'm not some mighty warrior." In fact, Gideon says this in Judges 6:15. "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." So Gideon is saying, I'm the least of the least of the least. I'm a real nobody. How could I possibly be a leader that saves Israel? You see, Gideon had to change his thinking to line up with God's thinking, to line up with the way that God saw him. Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." One of the first things you have to begin doing as a leader is saying and thinking of yourself as a leader. See yourself as a leader. Remember, another example would be Moses, when God talked to him out of the burning bush. And Moses said, "Oh, I can't do that. How could I go back to Egypt and bring the children of Israel out?" So we have to understand that God has placed us in that position as a leader. And if God has placed us there, then God has the confidence that we're going to learn and do the things that need to be done in order to be a good leader. And one of those things that you need to do is you need to begin to dress like a leader. Wear clothing that looks like it's from this century, not something from the 1950s. Wear something that's modern, that looks nice. Ladies, wear something that's modest. Men, don't wear shirts that are so tight that the buttons are separating. All right. I saw a manager of a store where I would stop in the mornings early on the way to school, and he would be walking in about the time I got there, and his shirt was too tight, and he didn't have his tie on yet, so his collar was open, had his tie in his hand, walking into the store halfway ready, and I absolutely know that it affected the way that the people under him looked at him, right, as a leader. So dress like a leader, act the part of a leader. Don't be standing around telling silly stories around the water cooler or the break room with the other people when you're supposed to be out there working. You're the example. Right? As the leader, you have to begin showing others how to do the work. You have to get there early. You have to stay late. You have to show up prepared and ready to go. You've got to be the example. You've got to be the professional. You've got to be the one showing the way for the others to follow you. Right? Because they're going to follow. If you want them to follow you, you have to be worthy of them following you. And then be an example of leadership. Read books. Listen to podcasts, go to conferences, get yourself a mentor. If you can't find one in person, get a mentor through their books and their videos. Right? Be constantly growing in your leadership skills. Isaiah 54 tells us to enlarge our tent. God wants us to constantly be growing and getting better at the things that we're doing. So understand, God placed you there. And who are you to argue with the God that created the universe? I would venture to say he knows just a little bit more than we do. Of course, he knows a lot more than we do, and he knew enough to put you in that position, so he knows that you can handle that position. Right? And then at the same time, when you're the leader and you know you're the leader and you act like a leader, you think like a leader, you have to be humble enough to understand that you don't know it all. The only leader who knows everything is a very insecure leader. A good leader, a successful leader, will go get people who are gifted, talented in that area and bring them in and put them to doing that. A good leader will get input from other sources, whether it's another leader or reading a book on that subject, forming a committee, bringing in your own workers. After all, who else would know better how to check in a preschool student than the person who does it every day? So ask their input. Get that input. Don't be afraid to go out and find information and use information from others. You don't have to know it all. And then the next thing is, as a leader, sometimes you have to make a decision afraid. That means you aren't really sure, but it's the best decision you can make at this moment. You've prayed about it, you've talked to others, you've gotten their input, then don't stand around and just procrastinate and wait and wait and wait to make a decision. That indecision is a lot worse than you making a decision that turns out to be one that wasn't exactly correct. Make a decision afraid. And I saw a movie where Matthew McConaughey was an officer on a submarine, and the officers above him were killed or injured. They were out of commission. And he met with the crew and he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've never been in this position before, but I'll think of something. Y'all go back to your jobs. And one of the officers, the master's chief or something, came to a non-commissioned officer and said, sir, can I speak to you freely? He goes, yeah. And he goes, sir, the skipper always knows. You can't tell the men you don't know. What he was saying was, people want to follow you. And if you make a decision, they'll follow that decision. But if you waffle around and you're not sure and maybe this will work, it's going to permeate the whole group, the whole organization, and nobody's going to be making a decision because they're all going to be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. And when you do fail, admit it. Come right out, say, hey, that's on me. We thought it would work. I got all this information in. It didn't work. Okay, we're going to change it and we're going to do this because now we saw that didn't work. So let's tweak it a little bit and make it work. I have a draft of a book that I've written called Successful Failures. People that when you hear their name, you think success, you think mega success. And yet whenever you read their history and their story, you find out many times, each and every one of them had their business closed. Some of them went to prison for lack of payment. Their family deserted them. People turned their back on them. They failed after fail after fail in several different businesses, but they didn't quit. And they became very, very successful later on. So make sure you don't quit just because you fail, but at the same time, don't be afraid to make a decision and run with it. And then lastly, as a leader, you're really the servant of those that you are leading. Remember, Jesus told his disciples that the Gentiles lorded over the others. If, I'm the leader, I'm important, I'm bigger than everybody else, and you have to do what I say. Jesus said, if you want to be the greatest, serve them. Be a servant. That's why Jesus washed their feet. So your primary job as a leader is to serve those people that you're overseeing. You serve them by training them. You serve them by preparing them and giving them the information they need and giving them the material they need and putting them in a position that would be the best for them to succeed. You do that by getting to know them, building a relationship with them, finding out their birthdays, their interests, their likes. People will work for you way longer than they'll work. I got that backwards. People will work with you far longer than they will work for you. So make sure you get to know them. All right. Now, as I said, that's just a few things about being a leader. And the last thing I'm going to say, the most important, is pray for your people. Keep them lifted up before the Lord. All right. That's the end of this little lesson. Again, my name is Larry Hillman, Kidmin Coach. God bless.